We in
Makes
there.
my heart.
Okay. So, for those of you who are tuning into this stream, either new viewers or people who've been around for the last month or so while I've been messing with things, trying to do something a little bit new today. I'm trying to start bringing other people into the stream a little bit more and share a lot of the stuff that they're doing, a lot of the stuff that they're working on, a lot of the stuff that they're thinking about. And as y'all know, for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Pat the Flip. I write about a lot of fighting game stuff, among other things. And I wanted to kind of use the stream as an opportunity to talk about people who engage with fighting games in ways that don't always show up out in the kind of like the typical like FGC bubble. And I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk to really cool people who also got good at things. Like for me personally, one of the things that fighting games gave me was a way to deconstruct skill development and think about how you go ahead and get better at something. And so naturally, one of the first people I wanted to talk to is Aevee. She's at Mammon Machine on Twitter. She's fantastic writer and editor. I see her work mostly on Zeal, which is a publication that she runs. And you also came out with a game called We Know the Devil recently, which I have not played yet, but I'd love to talk more about it. I can't do horror, so you're going to have to tell me how scary it is first.
Not that scary, I promise. I have to tell everyone this, but it's actually like more suspenseful and then you cry than it is scary. There's no jump scares or anything.
All right, I can do suspense crying if Irene is like holding my hand or something. But it's been my experience that people get into fighting games for different reasons and interesting reasons, and people tend to stick around or not stick around based off of kind of how they, the peer group they have and how they think of their own process of skill development. And I'm kind of interested to open up two conversations, right? One is about fighting games, and the other is about your work as a writer and as an editor and like a maker of things, and see if there's any interesting overlaps in terms of like how we think about growth and progression and that kind of stuff. So I guess if there's anything else you want to add in your intro, feel free. Otherwise, we can just get to it.
Let's see. No, that's pretty much me. Is that I've been a journalist for a real long time. I decided to make my own publication called Zeal, which publishes a lot of cool stuff. Submissions are open. You can go to mammonmachine.com for information on that. And We Know the Devil is on Steam Greenlight right now, which we're all really excited about. We're currently 14 out of like 1,900 or something like that. So I'm impressed with us for our little like tiny made in 3 months visual novel.
Yo, that's awesome.
But yeah, but that's really me. I have a really bad Twitter account. That's mostly why people know me.
I love your Twitter account, and I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. I try real hard to fill up garbage. But yeah, let's talk about those things.
Okay.
They are all very cool things, and I have many thoughts on all of them.
Awesome. So I met you at GDC a couple years ago, and I think it was on like the second floor of Super Duper Burger, right? Was that the first time?
Oh yeah.
It was like I think it was like me, you, and Christine Love, and we were just talking. And I remember I distinctly remember it being one of the stops I made that night, where I just like stopped by for an hour and just like talked about fighting games, and then pieced out. And I was like, in retrospect, like they must have thought I was really weird, right? But honestly, like that was one of the first times or the first kind of notable moments in my experience of the game industry where I realized that like there are lots of people who kind of pay attention to fighting games or engage in different ways, but that you don't necessarily see showing up at the tournaments or showing up on stream because they're not necessarily the most competitive people, right? That the things they get out of it are a little bit different, right? And so when Guilty Gear Xrd came out and you started writing about it a little bit, I think you had an essay on Zeal about Milia, right?
Yeah, actually, it's embarrassing, but remember when everyone used Elo for like 5 seconds?
Yes.
So my my thing for Elo was I was gonna talk about various characters from Guilty Gear, and I think I got it. Yeah, I did Milia, I did Ramlethal, and I did Eno. Mm-hmm. Those were the 3 that I did. I should have done more of those, actually. But
that's right. That was when like Ella let you put these big, beautiful images. I remember just Milia all over my feed for a second for like the 3 times that I logged in. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
They used to let you put a gigantic animated GIF. So I had that like, when like Milia does her like hair flip when she's gonna use her like super. That was the GIF I had.
Nice.
Which is really cool.
So how'd you get into fighting games?
Well, let's see. Well, I played. I really liked Darkstalkers as a kid. Actually, that was my sort of like the pre knowing of fighting games as like a thing that you could practice and get good at. Darkstalkers was really the one that I was most, because the characters' designs are so compelling and captivating to this day. And that's like, and I'll probably talk about this, but I really like fighting game characters as characters from everything from animation to their game design to the way that they're used in tournaments. I find that whole sort of like aspect of them really, really interesting. And it's one of the reasons why I still follow fighting games. The first game that I like tried to actually like play like it was like I wanted to get good at it was BlazBlue Calamity Trigger. And that was probably, to be honest, right when it came out, because I was super excited because I had played I had super loved Guilty Gear because I thought Guilty Gear was so wild and it was so crazy, and I had played that in high school, and then BlazBlue was coming out, and I was aware that competitive stuff existed where when I hadn't been with Guilty Gear, I just beat up all my friends because they didn't know how to play it. And I had no idea actually how to play Guilty Gear at all. But with BlazBlue, I actually started practicing, and I played Rachel. I was a huge fan of Rachel because she has this really haughty style to her. She's this tiny pompous little brat. And she fights like a tiny pompous little brat too, which sometimes there's incongruity between the game design and the actual play, but she can keep away. She harasses you with all these projectiles. She can fill this screen with really obnoxious stuff. And then her own battle animations, she never actually gets hit. She just throws her familiars in front of her, and they're the ones that get damaged and electrocuted and everything. And she's just kind of whatever. So she was really fun. She was really fun to play as, and I probably practiced her more than any other character I've ever played, even with when Xrd came out, because I was really bad. I had all these dreams, and then I didn't.
So I'm curious, what were those dreams, right? When did you close your eyes and imagine yourself on the Evo stage, or
No, definitely not. Which is maybe why those dreams didn't go much of anywhere. But I wanted to get better.
Yeah.
And I think actually in my heart of hearts, I wanted to get good enough at fighting games to better understand watching fighting games. Because I really when I wrote those posts on Elo, when I wrote about Milia Rage, watching high level competitive Milia play, any high level competitive play is beautiful. But I felt I still feel Milia is particularly beautiful to watch. Because she has this, it's just she has this set of tools, and when she's used really, really well, that sort of her, all the spacing that she has to engage in, the ways in which she traps players, the way that a high level player can use these tools to trap people, Milia, and the ways that she moves across the screen, she has all of these really interesting movement options. Seeing those used to their highest potential, or just used really cleverly, is to me particularly beautiful, and it's really fun to watch that character in ways that I feel more about this about Guilty Gear than a lot of other fighting games, is that it's just particularly everyone, what people do is just so fluid and so fast and so and is so kind of like, I don't know, frantic in ways that
Sure.
other fighting games are quite not, but also very like everyone feels very fluid and also very in control of what they're doing.
Out of curiosity, have you ever played against a good Melia player?
I have probably you are the best Melia player I've played against.
Okay. I'm not a good Melia player in the grand scheme of things, but it's interesting to me that you bring that up because it is certainly beautiful when you're watching it. But oh my god, when you're playing against a great Melia player, the moment you get knocked down, you think, oh, I just lost.
Yeah, no, it's suffering for you.
Yeah.
Which is like maybe another thing that I like about Melia. Is that she can make people suffer, and that's like fun to watch. But it is like you bring up a really good point because you know what people complain about and what people like experience when they're fighting and competing against it is so much different than it is as somebody who's like watching and seeing like to me like, because I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Melia's dance is really beautiful to me, and like watching for whatever reason I find like and this may be my own character prejudice or whatever. I found like Zato more annoying to watch.
Sure.
I feel like that secondhand annoyance more than I do with Melia. I think because Melia has like this, like it feels kind of delicate, like she's in a lot of control, but it's also very risky for her. So I have this like really tense feeling, like I'm like, oh, I want to like, if you've like got this person completely in your clutches, but if you make a mistake, it's going to be over. So I feel both kind of like, so I feel really thrilled. Whereas with like Zato, sometimes it's just like you're in pressure forever, or like which I know Melia can do that too, but like
it is very different though. Like if you can block Milia's first two mix-ups when you get knocked down, you probably have a shot at like knocking her down or getting away or something. With Zato, it's more like his pressure is crushing and relentless. He's less about mix-ups and more about these inevitable like just waves of pressure that crush you.
Right. And Zato can be funny. Like the shark is the funniest thing.
Yeah.
It's one of the funniest things. And like as somebody watching, when you're like playing against it, it feels like complete horseshit. But when you're watching it and that shark comes out and somebody like eats a shark to the face, it's really like it's real good.
Oh yeah.
I love it when that.
Did you play Zato much for yourself?
I never played Zato much. I actually so the character that I played the most was Sin. And I played Sin because I didn't really feel very confident. I probably should have stuck with somebody who I was more interested in like their play style. Or like, but I felt like I couldn't quite get at the level where I would be having any fun playing with Melia. So,
do you know how Zato's shadow, the Eddie shadow, works?
Yeah, no, I definitely like. It's yeah. I've suffered
So
against it.
So
you played Zato.
So for the people on stream who aren't huge Gear fans, basically, this is a character whose weapon is his shadow, and what he does is his normal moves are okay, but he's a pretty slow character, all things considered, at least compared to the rest of the cast. But he can summon his shadow, who then responds to the button releases. So when I press a button, like, slash or punch or whatever, my main character does something. And then when I release the button, the corresponding button, the shadow does something else. And what that ends up doing is you actually, it's the first fighting game where I've seen you have to deal with two characters and a whole bunch of intricacy connected to basically trying to control two characters. You have to, it bends your brain. Right, the first time I realized how Zato works as a character, I was staring at my hands. And I didn't know what the heck I was supposed to be doing. So yeah, it's
so much to think about.
yeah, and so again, it's one of those things where like when you're playing against it, you think, man, fuck this guy. But then when you try and do it yourself, you think, oh my god, like anyone who beats me with Zato, like they earned the heck out of this. Um, so as you mentioned that you get into fighting games these days, and it's more about like you're more inspired by the characters, right? And that they're they're kind of like. There's a lot of work that goes into them, and that shows, right, in the animation, in the style of play, and especially in a game like Guilty Gear, you get to see so much of that. It's so rich, right? Like, there's nothing generic in that game.
So much. There's like Guilty Gear still has some of like my favorite character designs, and like they're so weird and wild, but they're just like they're so committed to it. Whereas like BlazBlue feels like a kind of like blender of anime cliches.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty Gear feels like it's just like, here's a character who's like, here's this shirtless dude with his hair in front of his eyes, and there's an eye painted on his hair, and he's gonna fight with a billiard cue, and he's gonna throw pool balls, and he's gonna like hit them and teleport around, like, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, that's like a regular character,
yeah.
right? You know, like there's a Elfelt, one of the new characters, who's like one of my favorite designs. She wears a wedding dress, and she like fights like an FPS character. She has grenades. She has a sniper rifle that with manual aim. Like, these are, it's really fun. They put a lot of love and energy into making those characters incredibly distinctive.
One of my favorite Elfelt trivia is that the English voice actor, I think I told you this already, but the English voice actress for Elfelt, Cassandra Lee Morris, actually moonlit as a bridal blogger for a while, which is really so perfect.
That's so great.
So you connect to these characters like what do you know? Given that. Given a long enough time with engaging with a fighting game, eventually I'm guessing you'll churn out, you'll stop playing just because, you know, maybe you've lost the will to get good, or you found something else to catch your interest or whatever. But like how do the characters end up occupying space in your brain, right? Like how do you compare them to other fighting games? Are you inspired then to look at those characters and think about how you can get that kind of like energy, or that kind of just like, I guess, strength of characterization in your own games, or try and see in others? Like,
no, totally. So like if we're talking about like getting good in a sort of like life sense, because I know that's your like kind of like your through line through all of this. For me, like fighting games are cool. Like, I like to have hobbies. I like to kind of like have a lot of diverse interests. But for me, like what I want to get good at is telling stories and creating characters. That's always been like the thing that I'm like constantly like trying to figure out how to do the best that I can. And I think video games have, people talk a little like so much about art in games and like story in games and narrative, and there's a ton of different things that you talk about in terms of games, but I think games are actually super, super good at conveying character and characterization in really unique ways. And I think the games are often like super bad at stories. Nobody's ever been like, oh, this fighting game has like, you should play it for the story. It's got a real good
I seem to recall you saying that about Guilty Gear Xrd, though.
Well, like, Xrd is like I'm playing it for the story. Like, I'm watching Barbarella for the story or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like expertly crafted. It's batshit, and that's what I'm looking for. But what I think that Guilty Gear and like almost any decent fighting game actually does is has a level of attention to their characters that I think should be like highly respected on every level. Just because like no matter how like exaggerated they are, like they're kind of like pop stars or something, you know. They have like, especially in Guilty Gear, but also in like King of Fighters or Street Fighter,
sure,
you have these larger than life characters who basically function like celebrities. They have the design that goes into how they fight conveys a lot about their personality, from their animations to their like to just like the tools that they have and the ways that they end up getting used. So when like I see like Millie or whatever played at a super high level, I get a much better sense of that character's personality. This is I know this is a really cerebral, kind of like weird thing to say.
Go for
but
it.
I feel like I understand Milia better, being like played at an incredibly high level. You know, because there's not much to Milia in terms of story, you know? There's not much to like Ryu or
I played Chip in Guilty Gear, and I think his background is he's a drug addict weeaboo turned ninja president.
Great, which is great. That's why I love. But you know, like I remember once when you wrote about doing MMA and playing Chip, and the way that you talked about like I can like it's really hard to win with Chip, but the only way that I can win is with Chip.
Yeah, it is.
I'm paraphrasing correctly.
Yeah, I'm touched that you remember that. It is the curse of a Chip player, essentially.
Which is like a it's like almost, I think it's positively Shakespearean in the way in which like here's this person who's like you can like forget about like Chip's canon backstory and think about like here's a person who is at an enormous disadvantage relative to other characters, but has this particular way of winning, and that's the only way that he can do it, and it's the way that resonates the most with you. Is like a really fascinating like character trait, and it's only kind of like possible because of both you, the kind of like pilot for Chip, the player, and the design of that character itself. I think that's like it's interesting characterization for both of you in some ways, but it's also really interesting characterization just for like here's a like this character has a specific personality, and then like you have to be compatible with that personality, or you'll never do any good with that character, basically.
I think a couple years ago on Twitter I was doing a like tell me your mains and I'll tell you who you are or something like that, and I got it right surprisingly often, I think, because I think you're right. Like once you invest enough time and energy into fighting games, the characters you choose in both aesthetic and playstyle end up reflecting something about you, and often I think end up shaping you, right? Like I think of fighting game characters as like a different set of tools that I can use to play against somebody, and the way I think about it is my brain grows in different ways based off of what a character does for me and what I need to do myself, right? But I'm and this is a weakness on my end, is that I'm bad at aesthetics in general. Like I don't really think a whole lot about visually what draws me into a character or anything else. Like, you know, as soon as you give me a picture, I'm like, wow, I don't know what to do with it. This is why I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about the aesthetics of characters, because like that is something that doesn't grab me so much, right? So like when you get into Milia or Sin or whatever, like I'm curious, what is it that kind of hooks you on a character?
Ooh, this is a really good question, because it's it can be so many different things, and I'm trying to think of like characters that I like, characters that I find iconic. Like I love good outfits. Like I really do. Like I like good clothes, and like not necessarily like I really just like I just like the anti like the bikini armor feminism, because I think it's bad feminism on top of every other thing that it is. But like my issue is often not like I think characters in fighting games especially should dress like they're famous.
Hmm.
You know, like that doesn't mean dressing practically, and that doesn't necessarily mean dressing conservatively,
Sure.
certainly, but it does mean like dressing good, because clothes convey a personality, right? We're talking about characterization in general.
Hmm.
Your design, I'm really attached to the designs that evoke the personality of that character. Often in ways that are like not 100% straightforward, which
Uh-huh.
is maybe why I love Elfelt so much. Because like Elfelt, like she's got the gun, you know, she has this particular fighting style, but she also like is wearing a wedding dress.
Yeah.
There's like a gap between what she's doing and she does everything like very happily, you
Yeah.
know, like she doesn't seem like she's, you know, she wants you to have a bad time. She's just like, but she is like shotgunning you right. You know,
Yeah. The dissonance between like
like
the joy that's in her play and especially in her voiceover, I think just fucking nails it, right? I leave the English voices on, especially for her, because I think she's just fantastic. But like English or Japanese, whatever, her dialogue is great. And then I have all these memories of getting crushed by Elfelt players, and it's like,
she's merciless,
but
but she's merciless with a smile.
yeah, which is much like the Elfelt players I played with. Cool.
Yeah.
How about
I think that's. I think, mm-hmm.
how about Milia? What drew you to Milia? Because I feel like she's probably a good example of like understated visual design, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and I think like, well, one thing that's great is that like Milia's hair powers, for instance, and like I like, Schoolgirls by far I think like really animated itself in ways that no other fighter has.
Yeah.
But they were like very liberal, and very similar to Darkstalkers actually, in that they would let a character basically turn into whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
In order to make the hitbox for their animation or whatever. So they could be really, really creative.
Yeah.
And lots of like really interesting shapes come out of that. Like I love Eliza, who like morphs her body into just like whatever.
Yeah.
And Milia is able to do that with her hair. So she has her like own distinctive silhouette always. But the hair will become whatever it needs to. And so like even though so she has like this very cohesive identity as this kind of like cool, like very calm ice queen sort of personality, but then she's able to have all of these like extravagant, elegant animations around her. I think that's a really cool, like, it's a cool compliment to who she is, and it gives her a lot of like, because she's such an understated character, those hair animations give her a lot of like personality and flavor. They're really expressive, even though that she personally is not very expressive.
Yeah.
You know, that's her personality, but her hair kind of like does the talking for her, which makes her feel even more nonchalant while also allowing her like a variety of expression. I think that's like, I think it's actually like a really cool choice in a lot of ways.
That's awesome, and that's something I never would have thought about. Like, it's really cool.
Thank you. Well, I think that like a lot of, she's also like, she's small and delicate, and that conveys a lot of her like, she plays kind of like this cool assassin girl character who's like, I think very cliche in a lot of ways. You could tell, but it's pulled off really well, and you get to have the sense of actually like being that and watching that character be successful. One of the nice things about fighting games is that people are just like playing to win.
Yeah.
So you get to see scenarios that would probably not happen narratively.
Sure.
And what I kind of like mean by that is that like plot wise, you could be like, oh, this girl is like going to be the damsel in distress, or she was like going to be cool, but she's if we were like watching a movie, she'd never be able to be cooler than
Right.
this dude over here. But in a tournament, since y'all are fighting to win, I get to see like Milia beat the shit out of everyone.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Like, I guess, yeah, you have, I mean, you see it more often in something like Marvel vs. Capcom, right? Where you have like Ryu, who's just a normal guy, albeit one who can throw fireballs, or like Hagar, who's a mayor wrestler. And like, some of the best fan art of Marvel 3 is Hagar pile driving Galactus. Right? Like,
yeah, you get to see, like, yeah, I love often those sorts of like, to get into character to like designs that are not Guilty Gear. Some of my favorite animations. So like this Examu game Aquapaza.
yeah.
Has, it's like this compilation of like an obscure visual novel company. So they have like all like they've got like a pile of licensed characters that they've got to make into fighters.
Yeah.
And half of them come from like really mundane dating sims, you know, like high school dating sims.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, you know, what like, and they also have like some like magic fantasy night characters, and like they gotta fight each other. So what do you do? So they have like this character who's a librarian, and she's like carrying this pile of books, and her projectile is that she trips and falls and throws this pile of books in the air, and it's like a shrapnel projectile. Or she like knocks, like this bookshelf appears in front of her, and she trips and knocks it over and like on top of the other person. It's hilarious. It's really funny.
Yeah.
And it's also like conveys her character, and they got all of this like depth and a really interesting like play style out of a character through some really unique animation.
I guess there's one animation that stuck with me pretty early on, and it was if you know, I think is K Dash or K Prime in the KOF series. He's like the dude with ash gray hair, and he's always in this like tight black leather jumpsuit or whatever. But when you walk back with him, he doesn't do like a defensive like retreat. He just turns his back and puts his hands in his pockets. So he looks like this sullen kid, just like looking at.
Great.
Yeah, but I'm like, I was like, wow, that's exactly what you wouldn't do in any fight ever. But it says so much, right? Huh. Interesting.
Right. No, I love those. Like, Kula Diamond is one of my favorite characters from that, because she's got like, she has this really, I think when I forget the exact circumstances for it. It's like maybe her like timeout pose or her win pose or something, but she like looks like she's about to cry, and then turns around and falls forward. And as she does so, this like older woman kind of like materializes right in front of her to catch her. And it's a really like sweet gesture. And also like if she like, I think if she wins, one of them like appears and like picks her up and is like, "Oh, good girl," and like Kula's like kind of like pissed off about it because she's being treated like a kid. But this is like, it's a neat way to like add this character moment. I don't have any idea of like the context of like why that's happening or who the character picking her up is.
Yeah.
Even I think about Kula Diamond herself, other than that she's like small and made out of ice, and that already like, you already got me right there. That is an interesting way of like saying there's more to this character. There's something like there's some sort of context that this character belongs to, in a way that's like really resonant with the fact that it's just like a poignant little moment.
Right.
I don't know. You almost never see that.
Yeah, and considering you don't get any real narrative content in most fighting games, and even if you do, most people don't see it these days. I guess it's those moments that kind of stick, right? Like, I don't need to know the name. I mean, I'm sure that the ice woman that comes out probably has a name. I don't need to know it or who she is to know about that character from just that moment. That's really sweet.
Right, yeah, because like Kula, like you get the sense what's most important is you get the sense that Kula is like a kid fighting, and that she also has people looking out for her, and she has like, she just like feels more like an actual child than like somebody with a character design that is a child, if that distinction makes sense. And like those moments will be hours and hours of story mode, like all of Blaze Blue's like awful visual novel garbage, like 5 million hour long stuff, will not be able to convey like the same amount of emotion that like one Kula Diamond like wind pose is able to convey. Like the like it's a really different level of artistry. And I think that like fighting game developers should maybe like pay attention to how much like power they have to communicate within those very small moments, rather than think about like all this apocryphal context that people aren't going to like experience. It's not like part of them playing the game. It's not accessible or even interesting.
So speaking of accessible and interesting, I do want to talk a little bit about how, like I said in the beginning, the way that you continue to engage and enjoy fighting games kind of on the periphery or in this use case that isn't celebrated in like the kind of like main fighting game community. I want to know a little bit about like what it was like for you trying to learn how to play Guilty Gear or BlazBlue or any of these games, and then eventually like kind of the point at which you stopped, because it's really fascinating to me that you like when it comes to storytelling, you seem really confident. You've put like fiction and nonfiction out there. Like your writing is great, and the way that you work with other writers is fantastic. And you seem to do it with very little inhibition, right? Like you seem to be pretty confident when it comes to putting stuff out there and getting feedback and so on and so on. And like for me personally, I've like writing fiction is this barrier that only very recently have I started to try and pick at. Like for the longest time, it just felt impenetrable. I didn't know, like I could look outside and see a story, right? And that's why I was doing, and that's how I ended up doing journalism. But I didn't really, I never really felt like there was anything kind of that came just from me, right? Like that felt like the hardest thing in the world to put together, just to create a story out of whole cloth. However, I'm also one of the weirdos that like at 15 rediscovered fighting games, and like the prospect of losing horribly in front of people and getting and paying for the privilege, right? And like going back to the arcade and losing over and over and again, like that was nothing, right? Like it wasn't nothing. It was a lot of work, right? And there were the emotional highs and lows, but it never felt wrong, right? Or it never felt so intimidating that I didn't want to keep doing it. And I realized that like people like me are in the extreme minority, right? That's why like a Street Fighter can sell millions and millions of copies, but Evo only has like a couple thousand people in attendance, right? Like the churn and burn rate is extraordinarily high because people like me are super weird, and most people stop, right? Like most people don't go to video games to feel like they're going to the gym. They'll go to video games because they want to feel like they're having like a kind of more relaxing or steam blowing off event, right?
Oh, totally.
And so like this is more an exercise for me. Like I want to know, what did it feel like to kind of hit that like, where did you feel the barriers? Where did you feel the pressure? What kind of pressure did you feel when you were trying to get good at these games? Because I want to know what causes people to stop, since I haven't stopped.
No, that's really interesting now that I think about it. Wow. I might like think about, because I feel like I could like I could say some of the same things that you're saying about the way that I approached writing. And I would even say like I wish I had put my writing out there more. I wish I had had more confidence in publishing fiction, I think, earlier than I ended up doing so, or at least in the ways that I did. That's kind of, that could be a long story. But yeah, it never felt like it never felt wrong. I was like, I'm just going to do it. And like, like the universe isn't writing on this. I know some people who have like, it's interesting. I know some people who have much more faith that their writing or that their art is like world changing and important for like the universe. And they can't understand like why they're not um, like more well known,
Sure.
but they're also not maybe like putting it out there or like taking risks or like just like doing the grind, like the grind that it is of like practicing and putting it out and like looking for avenues and trying to like see where you can take your work, which is really interesting to me, I guess, because I have always felt like I've always had a really low self-regard for my own work, and it's like not just its cosmic importance, but whether it's any good.
Sure.
Yet I'm like, I'm not. It's not like I'm not gonna do it.
Right.
It's not like I'm not going to like. I mean, like, oh God.
But that's kind of amazing, though, right? Like, especially, I mean, no, well, think about this, right? Like, think about it in like, we live in a world where pretty much any book from anywhere, or movie, or TV show, or whatever, like, you could be downloading that right now, right? You have access to more, just like more anything than any of us ever have, right? Like in time, right? We have the capacity to be more literate now than any other human beings ever have. So you could easily spend all your time just consuming other people's stuff, and thinking about how great it is, right, or how terrible it is, without ever having to put yourself out there, right? But you don't. Despite that, right? Like, despite the fact that the vast array of the world's most awesome stuff is constantly being piped into your eyeballs, you still have like the confidence, right, and then the courage to like put your own stuff out there and be like, well, you know what? This other stuff is really great, and I don't think my stuff's that great, but here, you might like it anyway, right? Like that.
Yeah. I guess it is like, I feel it could be a lot of different reasons. I know that I could like, I could conceivably, by some standard, I'm not sure if I'm even going to agree with this statement, but by like a lot of standards, I could probably like spend my whole life, consuming art that was better than what I was doing, kind of like easily by like a pretty high bar.
Sure.
But that wouldn't actually like maybe that doesn't like solve any of the problems of like why I do art, if that makes sense. Like there's something.
Well, so when did you start? Like, when did you start actually like making stuff and putting it out there?
It was pretty young. I was like, I can't remember why I even decided that I wanted to like. I decided like really young that I wanted to be a writer. I have no idea. Like, I possessed her to think that would be like a good idea.
Isn't that great? I found some drawing or something I did in kindergarten where it was like, when I grew up, I want to be a journalist, and my dad saw that and was like, this child will be poor forever.
That's so true. But I think in some ways I almost like, this might be retroactive, but let's try it on. I had a friend who was an artist, and I wanted to do something that was that cool, but I couldn't like draw as well. So it was like, writing is this other tool.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use this tool to try and like do whatever. And now I have like a lot of now like if I thought about it, I would say probably something like there's people who might be like, who are much more technically skilled than I am. I'm also doing things for a particular place and time and people that I don't think anyone else is doing, and I think that actually kind of is important. That like for a long time, like in fact for a long time when I wasn't actually putting my writing out there, I was being taught that like we're trying to write to some like universal truth, and we want to make like the most universal narrative. And I guess I kind of like began to understand that there was value in speaking not to like this this imagined universal thing, but to like really specific experiences. And I feel like my writing has reached far more people by talking about like really specific stuff than it ever had before, even to people who aren't like necessarily like the explicit intended recipients of that message.
Which, I mean,
Um,
and yeah, I guess in retrospect that makes sense, right? Like we don't, at least we shouldn't be reading to find out more about people who are like us, or like that shared experience ends up getting boring, right?
yeah, sometimes you have to like figure out yourself
Hmm.
through your work. Um, and I certainly can't figure out myself by just talking to myself.
Yeah.
That's never going to work. Um, it has to be a conversation, which is part of why I like collaborative art.
Hmm. I'm curious to rewind a little bit. The moment
Yeah.
where you're talking about your artist friend and how you're like, man, I wish I could do something that cool, but I can't. So all
Mhm.
right. Um,
Yeah.
I've been going through that myself for years, and I kind of didn't realize
Uh,
that until relatively recently, right? Like, I've been working in a writing field and writing and editing for, I mean, if you count my freelancing days, like I started when I was 15, right? So it's been
mhm.
a while. But in the back of my mind was always kind of like the vague aspiration to like, oh, I need to teach myself how to code or fuck around with Game Maker because I want to make
Yeah.
games or movies or whatever. Like, I'm not gonna be picking up a pen and drawing anytime soon. But just it's been relatively recently, like talking with Irene actually about her art and the way she thinks about it, and my like incredible envy for all the awesome stuff that she can do, like these handy dandy portraits on the
Yeah.
stream
Oh,
visual.
she's so good.
Yeah. Where and like the stuff that she can do just kind of blows my mind, right? Like it blows my mind that I can just say, like, she can just think of a thing and then draw a picture of it, and there it is. She created something out of nothing, and I never got that feeling with writing. And it took me a while to realize. It was only relatively recently that I realized that I had like low self esteem about the medium of writing. Like, I don't actually even
Mm,
read that much in terms of books. I read a lot of like think pieces and blogs and tweets and Reddit
yeah.
posts and whatever, but I don't actually read that many books. And so I kind of underestimated the power that words can have on people, because I don't think about that as strongly
Mm,
as I think about the stuff that I can't make myself, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, I feel that. In fact, working on We Know the Devil was like a really huge. It was actually both for me and Mia. We had a really incredibly good working relationship, and it was a really big thing for both of us as artists.
mhm.
But one of the things that I started to realize was I had like this. I have the exact same thing, like low self-esteem about the medium of writing, even though I know I'm a good writer.
Mhm.
Um, like, or good. I'm
Yes,
pretty
yeah.
good. You know, um, but like, can't like. Sorry, I can't stop.
No, it's for
But
for the purpose of the stream. I think we can both accept that you and I are both good writers, and that we have the corresponding baggage that goes with
yeah,
being considering ourselves good writers, which is also that we think we're the worst writers, right? Like,
whatever. Yeah, exactly. And but one of the things too is that I was remarkably like, especially having like Mia there, and like Mia would like bring my characters to life, but like she would be so excited about creating that character like out of these descriptions.
mhm.
um and her like excitement at the fact that I was like making this person and like had all of these details of their personality and had worked them up, and then like even before we started writing We Know the Devil, when we were just kind of like doing groundwork on it. And I was like, whoa, like it's hard to believe um the attachment that many of my friends have to these characters who don't even exist in a narrative yet,
Mhm.
that are just like sketches, like kind of like notebooks, the equivalent of notebook sketches. And I feel that way constantly about other people's notebook sketches. So I was kind of like, I'm finally having this reciprocal experience that I've had for so long. Um, and I'm starting to have more confidence about how um, and I would say too, this is like for me, it's about fiction, but with nonfiction too, like often I would like, I could be really down on it, and then people would say like, I wasn't able to like see how this thing worked
Yeah.
until I read your essay, and then I sort of like feel like, oh, I actually did like accomplish something. For like me, it feels like a lot of work, like doing all this work to just like tell you about a thing that already exists.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm kind of like not doing anything. But of course, like actually explaining how it functions is a huge thing. And for like, not only is that like really hard, it makes a big difference for people.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know um, people have told me in the past that I write the way that I speak. And from from that, I can infer that I don't think I'm a fantastic like. And this is kind of one of my goals for this year is to kind of better embrace the craft of writing, because I think what in the end what I end up doing is I'm a largely verbal person, and so I just write what literally I do write more or less what I would speak. And it happens that I'm like smart enough to be able to describe something properly and effectively, and so it works. But I feel like part of me is also missing out from the actual beauty of writing, right? And that is actually another thing which I feel like when I read your stuff that it feels unafraid to like dig in there and really appreciate like a good word or a good phrase or a good sentence, right? Or a good moment.
That's a good word. I love a good word. In fact, I mean, like I had always actually wanted to be a fiction writer, so I had spent like I kind of like went into journalism because I hadn't like found really a voice with fiction. I hadn't like figured out a lot of the things that I needed to figure out. You know, there are many reasons for that. But I like read writers that really liked words. Like that's
who?
really important. I like Kelly Link is one of my favorite writers. Actually, she's a short story writer, and she often can like she does really good, very like kind of like literary short stories, but also accesses a lot of like she like accesses pop culture in a way that is not stupid and reprehensible, like the way that like I don't know Ready Player One or something like that does.
Sure.
That it's like just referencing.
Yeah.
She makes you feel like you're in a world where people also like watch a TV show. She has like this one story about like these two guys who are working at like a 24/7 convenience store. And they're right on the Canadian border. And they're also, there's this chasm where zombies come out. And the zombies come into their convenience store and try and buy things. But they're zombies, so it doesn't really like work. And like she'll do things like she'll say like, what's my favorite line from this story? My favorite line from this story is something like, the zombies were like Canadians in that they looked like people at a first glance, but once you got a better look at them, you could tell that they weren't. Or something like that. It's like zombies, like Canadians, kind of look like people at first. Is like it's like such a bomb to drop.
Yeah.
Like one of the characters has like only wears pajamas, but has like increasingly bizarre and kind of like somewhat unsettling imagery on his pajamas. That's always like described in loving detail. I don't know. She has like this eye for like, here's an insignificant detail about this world that I'm going to zoom in, and it's going to be pretty, and it's going to be funny, and it's going to be scary, and I'm going to like take you on this little ride for like maybe even just like a sentence or two. But that will make the entire world of this story seem more vivid, more lived in, even if it's just like, you never like understand like, why is there this chasm with zombies coming out of it? You know, what does that even like, you know, and they're like, why is their response to that to try and like, we're going to try and revolutionize retail by trying to figure out what the zombies want to buy. And there's no answer to any of these questions. It's really just about like, it becomes like this really surreal story about like working a crappy retail job.
I'm gonna have to read this.
Yeah, I highly recommend her.
So like, with that specific inspiration, then is there like, are there moments that you can point to, and like if we were to revisit the AVB canon, so to speak, would we be able to find moments where that influence starts creeping in?
Oh yeah, you can see it. Like you can see that all over We Know the Devil. Actually, if you read her, actually gave it to a girlfriend. So I'll be like interested to see like how that um if the connections can be seen or how obvious they are.
Hmm.
Because like um but I definitely feel like I lifted a lot of her like her imagery, the ways that I like talk about things, um the world building. I like her from like I read Pale Fire um as well, which is a Nabokov, an incredible like Nabokov book, which is like 30 pages of this like poem supposedly done by this like famous Appalachian poet,
Hmm.
and then like 200 pages plus of commentary by this like super delusional dude um, who's like who basically tells his life story. All of these like interwoven stories like come out in the footnotes,
Hmm.
and his like really deliberate misreading of what this poem is actually about. Um, so the poem
Interesting.
like comes like so like and that person gets characterized really well through the way that like he just reads totally obvious nonsense
Mm.
into this poem, and he like he'll like literally go off and like start talking about his like own life story that has nothing to do with anything because he thinks it's way more interesting than this poem he's supposed to be like talking about. um those are like some
So
there's like
would you describe those as like people who inspire you now, or people who inspired you kind of when you first started like consciously improving?
those are definitely people who inspired me. Now, although like I first read Kelly Link a rather long time ago,
Hmm.
I think it was when I was in college.
Okay.
So like she's been there for a really long time. Some of my earliest references were like Jane Yolen and some like YA authors, Robert Cormier,
Hmm.
who did a lot of like really um, extremely depressing children, like kind of like young adult literature um, that was very character driven, often like something kind of like terrible would happen at the last minute to kind of like ruin everything. Uh, it was kind of like um, the they were always children, but they always like were very smart and mature, and it felt like it was taking childhood feelings very seriously,
Sure. Yeah.
um, which I both really needed at the time and kind of like took on as a thing that I wanted to always do
Hmm.
with my own writing was to like take those sorts of feelings seriously.
Which
It
and
felt like
that's kind of interesting to me because I feel like that actually gets us a little bit closer to like a kind of a very commonly relatable story, right? Like that big story that we can all connect to. Like certainly when I look at the stories that kind of sweep the world, right? Like the Harry Potters or hell even Star Wars, right? Like a lot of it is like childhood feelings extended into this world of that they're then manifested in fantasy, right? And that's something that like anime does so well, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no.
You brightened up so much when you.
Well, I mean, it really kind of like is why I still have that attachment. I don't know, like I felt um the stuff that made me feel taken seriously
Hmm.
was a big influence on me. And it almost kind of like instilled in me this kind of like desire to not forget that and to like pay it back.
Hmm.
Um, Rather than, I suppose, um, I don't know, like um, pretending that I was more adult than I actually was,
Sure.
um, or that, or distancing myself by kind of like getting something that was so distinctly adult that that would be like the way that I would
Hmm.
prove that I was grown up or like beyond childhood feelings or something like that. Because that's like, I feel like that's another path that I could have gone down. And I know a lot of people did go down, and I almost went down it. But things turned out very differently, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to speculate about all these. These are huge
Yeah.
questions you're asking.
Well, I'm having fun hearing you work through them.
Well, thank you. I'm not doing bad
No, you're doing
for.
fantastic. Especially considering you're the first guest and no one really had any idea what to expect. So, like, now I get to show this to the next person and they can just prepare to be grilled. It'll be great. So when I saw you at, I think it was IndieCade, you were telling me briefly in passing about you were giving a talk on 7 out of 10 games,
Mhm.
and that was really interesting to me. I know, like, if I look at kind of my own history and education in games writing and kind of just picking them apart and analyzing them. I kind of grew up as you did somewhat like in the insert credit tradition, right? Where like
Yeah.
those guys were all about like dissecting the weird shit. Not and you know like Brandon Sheffield grew up with like a TG16 and a Genesis, right? So like that's one of the reasons why he's so weird is he wasn't playing SNES games like everybody else,
Hmm.
right? And it's from them that I kind of developed like an appreciation for the weird stuff because I felt like as you know like the kind of the longer I stick around, the longer I learn, the more I get to learn from the weird shit rather than like the kind of the big hits that everyone knows about or the over polished AAA blockbusters or whatever. So I
Hmm.
was super glad to hear that you were talking about it, but I didn't actually get to go. Like, what it, I mean, you don't have to sum up the talk or anything, but I'd love to know kind of what you find in the 7 out of 10 games, how your path was to discovering like the joy of like failed experiments, I guess.
Mm.
And you know, any shout outs to like kind of like particular pet examples would be
Ooh.
fantastic.
Ooh, so many. I had the like. Let's see. Why did I do that? Is such a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if I have like. I was so tired of good games.
Yeah.
They were boring the shit out of me. Um, like I was. I think Maddie Myers has written about this a couple of times. I think like it might have been like a year or so ago. She wrote something about the exhaustion of like keeping up with
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
And if you want to be like a real journalist, which is not what I
Yeah.
am, fake gamer girl
Bam.
journalist over here. If you want to be a real, like you have to keep up with all this stuff, and it's like, it's hard, and it's also hard. Um, I was just thinking about this because like I wanted to write some like thoughts on the Force Awakens because I'm like interested in
Mm-hmm.
things like uh, um uh sorry, I just got a funny message on my phone.
Oh boy.
Hi Harris. Um but um when I was trying to like keep up with like Dragon Age or something or Bioshock Infinite or like The Force Awakens, like I was just feeling again, I was like, oh God, I'm back to this thing where it's like really hard to write about this because
Mm-hmm.
I can't write about the part that I am actually interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta acknowledge all of the discourse
Yeah.
that's happening around it at the same time. And that's so like it's overwhelming and it pull, pulls away from like the actual thing that I want to do, which is like zoom in on this one thing and be like, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and it was just like good games were kind of like making incremental steps in this particular direction. It's like we almost got diversity down, we almost have a gay character down, we almost have a trans character
Yeah.
down. We've got weird elf racism, and that still flies these days, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but games that were like totally fucking up in a completely weird direction, were doing something like they weren't like this weird baby step towards like tokenization um, or like mainstreaming or whatever. They were like maybe in any sense, in any aspect, they were like actually making something a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
weirder and risky, and I found it a million times more inspiring, even when they were terribly written or like really janky and like hard to like actually play. I found their world so much more fascinating, so much more original. Um, like I played this game Baroque, which is like this action RPG roguelike that's set in this like kind of like far future gothic um like Cyber Dungeon. It reminds me of kind
All
of
right.
like some of like the like Blame, or what's some other stuff. I read some like it reminded me of some like kind of like gory manga sci-fi stuff that I had like seen that had really kind of like like literally Baroque sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Baroque. Um, it's a very Baroque game. Um, I liked that. I liked that a lot. I just started playing Nier, which is like another one of those cult classics.
Yeah.
And it actually has great dialogue and a really good dub.
Interesting.
Everyone's like, their dialogue is really like that stuff is has more character to it.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about like character, those whole games have like um, they made aesthetic decisions that were not like accessing our like shared language of like here's what a science fiction story is, or like here's what a fantasy story is, or here's like what a
Yeah.
military story is. They were like, we want to do something really weird, we're extremely committed to it. It's going to be like janky and unpopular, but we're like going all in on this.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel is like when I go to places like that in games, I kind of like I want to do something that's that committed to whatever I'm gonna do, that has that much personality, because those like I feel like win people's hearts in a way. Even like that mainstreamy stuff can win people's hearts just by like really like they might have like a really interesting character. Like one thing I will say, like I tend to like be really harsh on BioWare.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't really like their worlds at all. I never like
Sure.
I'm like, oh man, I really want to go to like generic Fantasyland, like where there's elves and shit. Because
Yeah.
that kind of bores me. But they might like actually have like a really cool person there, and I'm like, I do want to meet that person. That person sounds cool. That's like, I kind of wish they'd commit to that more.
I think I was driving by like Great America or something the other day, and I saw an ad for a Mass Effect ride. At least I think it was a ride, and I was like, I that was unexpected,
That's
but
totally why people play Mass Effect.
yeah.
People play Mass Effect because they want to fuck that person. Like I don't, like
Wait,
I don't know.
so who did you end up with in Mass Effect?
Oh, and Mass Effect. I okay. My favorites are Tali and Jen. I love Jen is a sweetie. He's my son. That was how like I never played Mass Effect 3 though.
Okay, yeah, it's fine. I think 2 is probably the better one. So, I guess I want to transition into the let's talk more about We Know the Devil. But
yeah.
First, I wanted to kind of bookend the skills conversation, right? Like I think that there's been just talking with you. There's this interesting parallel to me in like when I think about growth in fighting games. Part of what I needed to grow in fighting games was like a zone of like relatively low consequences and stakes, right? Like I needed some risk, and in that case, it was the risk of like paying 50 cents and losing in front of a bunch of people, right? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as big as I went straight into this tournament, right? Like where that risk is like however many hundreds of dollars it costs to travel and blah 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 blah, right? So too, it is like I see a lot of what you're talking about in terms of kind of the way that you like gradually stepped up into realizing that you're actually pretty good at this stuff and feeling confident in your stuff, right? As well as the unreliability of our own personal perspectives, right? Like I think I'm trash when it comes to like writing stuff, but when I show it to people, they very nicely tell me that that's not the case, right? And so I'm increasingly learning that I am an unreliable narrator when it comes to my stuff. So I'm curious, like if let's say the new Guilty Gear Revelator comes out and you decide to make like a push towards it again, like what would you feel like you needed in order to not churn out, right? Like to keep you going until the next Guilty Gear came out.
Okay, so I think I know the answer for this.
Mm-hmm.
So to talk about the writing equivalent for
Yeah.
this, like, um, writing is done in the workshop method or whatever. It's like how creative writing tends to be taught,
Mm-hmm.
and what that means is like you have like a dozen people or something, and like every week, everyone's gonna a couple of people are gonna write pieces. Everybody's gonna read them, and everybody's gonna give feedback on those. Um, so you're kind of like, it's not really a competition or anything like that, but
Mm-hmm.
you're in an arena where you're like you're always seeing what your peers are at,
Yeah.
and you're learning from what your peers are doing, and
Mm-hmm.
you're also kind of like able to like see what are they doing right, what are they doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not like doing that against, crucially, you're doing that against people who are like, some people are definitely better.
Yeah.
Some people are also definitely worse. Um, and nobody is like the Daigo of writing.
Sure.
You're not up against the professor or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like you're on a on a healthily even playing field. And one of the things that I find one of the things that I often find with fighting games is that, especially when there's some sort of input barrier,
Mm-hmm.
like Guilty Gear, like you have to like learn a combo if you like want to actually do some damage
Yeah.
in that game. Um, those are some of the times when it feels like most frustrating, because then I have to like I have to memorize this and then execute it in a real match
Mm-hmm.
if I want to like even begin to sort of like make things happen.
Yeah.
Which feels frustrating because like for me, what I always find interesting is like that dance, the
Sure.
footsies, like the mid game stuff like that. I feel is like the area that's most interesting. But like if I get a straight hit, I can't necessarily like even the process of understanding, oh, this could be converted into damage or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of lessons that kind of like feels like I need to have like aced. I need to have like already passed fighting games 101 or like 201. I
Mm-hmm.
need to be like in the advanced seminar before I'm even actually playing this game.
Yeah.
I think that might matter less if I was consistently playing against maybe it's the fact that I'm not playing against the same people,
Mm-hmm.
that it's just randos online,
Yeah.
and they might be like in your same skill bracket, but I'm not like I feel like it's like I read some piece on the internet, but I didn't get a sense of like what are this person's patterns, what are they
Right.
doing, I don't actually understand what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong
Yeah.
just from playing 3 rounds with them.
Yeah. You don't have a Ken, basically.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that I see how you could get that, like,
Yeah.
when you're describing the like writer's workshop or the circle, like that sounds like an arcade to me, right?
Right, exactly. And I think this is why, like, when I see people who like stick around and do well, it's because they have a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Not only do those people like motivate them to actually like show up, but you're consistently like you gain progress.
Yeah.
And I feel like you gain progress on individual people,
Mm-hmm.
like more so necessarily than you just like understand a character better. You might
Yeah.
like understand what a character can do, but like characters can do a lot in Guilty Gear.
Yeah.
Like
Out
there's
of
so much.
out of curiosity, what is, in terms of like the kind of the physical aspect, like what is, I'd say like the most physically intricate or demanding task that you've tried to learn or teach yourself other than fighting games, right?
Other than fighting games?
Yeah, because like I found that when I talk to like musicians and they engage with fighting games, it's a little bit easier for them because the process of learning an instrument is not. I mean, an arcade stick is basically an instrument, and a one frame link is basically just a timing of 2 notes, right? But for folks who don't have that kind of background, or like with me, it's like fighting games and my growth in martial arts have been pretty much intertwined, right? So that is already there, and I'm curious, like for you, if there's any kind of analogous activity, or if that's a part of your brain that you've kind of just not paid a whole lot of attention to.
That's really interesting because I always do think about that because it is so weird that writing it's not like that.
Yeah.
You know? Like, there's or maybe it is, but just on a level that's like so that I'm so used to. Because I
Yeah.
don't have to like I mean, I understand like I'm sure memorizing things like grammar, understanding grammar is still a challenge for people like even at like even when they're much older.
Right.
But I just get it. Like
Yeah.
I know that stuff.
Yeah.
And I can make it do whatever I want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm already so far beyond like the basic level there.
Yeah.
That I get to just have I don't like just get to have fun, but I get to like I'm playing the game.
Yeah. You're playing the real game. Yeah.
Right. I'm at the real game whenever I'm writing something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like so much to the real game, but I'm at the real game.
Right.
The most I was never great about instruments or martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
I boxed for 2 years when I was in a creative writing program.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
I'm Butch, right?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
How'd you do in sparring?
I sparred only a couple of times.
Gotcha.
I was mostly doing it to like there is like a whole bunch of other women there, and it was like mostly about like staying in shape. So it felt like a cool tough girl thing. But like yeah. I probably don't have the patience or the discipline.
Sure.
And I think it might be easier. It's easier though that when there's like a concrete goal, because I'm kind of like the only one I'm accountable to.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have shown up at that boxing gym if I hadn't had two other friends from the creative writing program who like we were all doing this together with. Mm-hmm. I really think that's like
that makes a lot of sense to me, because one of the things that I've had in my mind is like, and this is especially like coming from working on Rising Thunder and working on League of Legends, like one person's behavior tends to feel like if you just look at one person's player story from like sign up to login to playing to onboarding to eventually churning out, like you can learn a decent amount about that one person, but in the aggregate you start to see patterns, right? And so when I think about like what goes into these games to make people kind of stick with it or not stick with it, what I get is, how do I put this? Well, I guess it's the way I think about it is that we tend to over-valorize and mystify hard work and discipline, right? Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Instead of unpacking what that actually means, right? So this is what I'm trying to kind of pick apart a little bit, like trying to understand the points that either contribute to your retention, right, and kind of give you enough motivation to stick with it until you get to the point where you have fun, or what took away from it. So that's really useful to me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, I would honestly say, like, at some points I was like, oh, it's a design problem. Mm-hmm. Now I kind of like, I reassessed thinking about like fighting game retention, or like why I quit playing fighting games as a design problem. Once I started like noticing how people would like, people would put up with a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I feel like there are perhaps limits.
Sure.
False Roman cancels maybe were kind of like a hard limit.
Yeah.
Maybe a little egregious. But some of the other things I think are like, it's why am I sticking around to do it? Mm-hmm. Do I have a reason to do that? And often didn't. Because like for me, going back to like why do I play and what my engagement is, like I'm interested in character design and I'm interested in following these competitively. And like once I understand how Milia is supposed to work in theory, mm-hmm. I feel like there would be a breakthrough once like I understood how like Milia actually worked in practice and I like did it. I know that there's this level of revelation that's like waiting for me, and I still kind of like want to have that. Mm-hmm. But I am not having had that. I still am at the level where I I can follow what's happening.
Right.
see why people are making the decisions that they're making and like why they were significant,
Mhm.
and what that says about Milia and like what Milia's playstyle is and how that characterizes her. And that's like the meat, like in the game that I'm playing, in the get good of like writing and characterization, I've already like achieved that
Yeah.
lesson.
Interesting. So from there, let's go on. If you assuming you still have the time and energy, let's talk a little bit about We Know the Devil. So
Let's talk about knowing the devil.
yeah, so that was kind of a tease because I'm instituting a rule for the show that if you want to plug something you made, which I think we should, I want you to plug something else first and just real quick give a shout out to some work out there and tell us why you think it's cool.
Okay, I did think about this.
Yes.
So, um, okay, so this we'll see, but I love this. I can't stop thinking about it. So, Chris Mukai,
Mm-hmm.
Krismukai, has this comic called Weeping Flower Grows in Darkness. Um, that's just this like it's a short kind of like zine comic. Um, Chris is a storyboarder on Adventure Time actually,
Cool.
um, and has done some like cool episodes recently. But this is their own original work, and it's about these two children who are good friends with each other, and they both have older brothers who are also friends with each other. And something like really bad but unexplained has happened between these two older brothers. And it's kind of like about the children, the much younger kids, sort of like hanging out and like speculating, and like mythologizing what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they find this. It's called the Indian pipe flower, and it's this creepy, real flower that's like has these bell-shaped flowers. It's completely white. It's a plant, but it's a parasite that grows off of fungus.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, so it has no chlorophyll whatsoever, um, and it's just like this really stark, um, like there, like it has just this beautiful imagery of it like growing and
Mm-hmm.
like one of the kids like is having like these nightmares about it. Um, and she also has a comic that's like following those same characters and called Angel's Share that's on Hazlitt. That's also really good. I don't know. It was um, the posture of like these characters is so like it's very simple, um, but their emotions are like really exaggerated in a way that's um, feels like in some ways like fighting game animation almost. Just in the way that like these bodies don't have to like move the way that an actual body has to. It can feel a little bit more like um, they can like take on this posture, or at least the frames that she chooses to depict within the comic can be these really like kind of like dramatic gestures. And I know maybe that's not the um
No, it's
the best.
awesome.
I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like Weeping Flower Grows in Darkness and Angel's Share, and you should check out the episodes of Adventure Time she storyboarded. It was this one, I think it was called Mama Said, and it has a giant woman in it, and that's awesome.
Sweet. All right. So, excellent plug. I'm definitely gonna have to chase that. We Know the Devil. What the heck is it? Why'd you make it?
Um, it is a group relationship horror visual novel. That
Okay.
was like my tagline. Basically, it's about three kids at this kind of like weird Christian summer camp who are sent to spend a night at this cabin in the middle of the woods and wait for the devil to appear. And there's three characters, and your choices in this this visual novel are to basically choose which two hang out with each other
Mm-hmm.
and which one gets excluded. And you get to make a choice every like in-game hour until the double shows up. And when the double shows up, there will be consequences based on who you chose to be together and who you chose to exclude. And that's it. There's 3 endings based on who you excluded, and then there's like a special secret 4th ending where no one has to get pushed out.
That's a very, very creative way of saying you included a harem ending. I appreciate it.
Yes, there is a harem ending. It's like it's a mutually haremistic ending.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like harem leader. What do you call the harem primary? You get a triad ending. Basically, yeah. So it's yeah, we've got like this 80s horror synth soundtrack. We took the pictures on disposable cameras in the middle of the woods at night. It was really scary. I didn't get killed though. Instead, I wrote this visual novel. Yeah, I was actually kind of scared because there had been like, someone was like kidnapped and dragged into the woods once.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. Next time we'll go with someone, I promise. Yeah.
So how did it come about? What was its inception?
Oh, we were like doing something for the I Love You jam, which was I'm gonna adjust my posture because my legs are falling asleep. We're doing it for a game jam. Me and Mia Schwartz, who's another comic artist who you should also check out. I work with her work as well. Like Schwartz, her comic Strawberries is really, really good. She has like an amazing like gag comic sense. Excuse me. But she and I decided we were just like, let's do a visual novel. I pitched a whole bunch of ideas, and like within about a day or so, we had settled on what our premise was going to be, and I like basically like figured out kind of like mathematically how many words we would have to write, and I knew how many words I could write a day, and then I just did it.
Wait, so what was your formula for figuring out the length?
Oh,
and like how'd you size that up?
So I think it was like I pitched some of these initial ideas. We settled on We Know the Devil. Originally there was going to be 4 characters instead of 3. We cut it down to 3 because we thought that would be more manageable. We decided it would take a course over 24 hours. And so then I decided, or actually it's 12 hours, but we're like a day.
Sure.
So once I landed on like 12 hours, I was like, well, I can write about like 20,000 words in a month because we had a month to do.
Okay.
So it's like I can do like 1,000 words a day, definitely. And so like,
how did you size up like? And this is fascinating to me. Like when I think of my writing work, like there's some ideas that you can't do in under 1,000 words. There's some ideas that you think are worth 4,000, but in fact you're just a terrible writer and you should have done it in 1,000, right? Or like the I think the go-to rule for script writing is that like 1 page is 1 minute on of video, right? But I don't know how that applies to games, especially to visual novels, right? Like.
Well, it was wild. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. There we go. That's.
I was like, well, one of the things. Okay, here were our goals. Goal 1, we wanted it to be short because most visual novels are terribly overwritten, and making it shorter would just make it better. Like there's no reason to write words for the sake of words. All the words in it should be good. Let's keep it short. We also didn't have a lot of time to do it, so of course it had to be short.
Yeah.
We also wanted it to be complete. we didn't want it to feel like this. Here's the beginning of a cool idea, like a lot of game jams are. It's like, oh, here's the proof of concept.
Yeah.
Let's finish it. So what we did was like, we're like, okay, here's the premise: 3 kids hang out with each other, and someone gets excluded, and 2 people are gonna like pair off. That's the concept, right? Sorry, I'm getting inappropriate messages from my phone for some people. Hi, Mia.
I hope this becomes a hallmark of my stream, right? Like, I just... yeah.
No,
that's fantastic.
I'm loved by so many people.
You are.
Aww. Gonna cry. Anyways, when I was making We Know the Devil, we decided to do something like, okay, we're gonna have these characters hang out. We need to have a bunch of choices around that. We need to have a bunch of scenarios where you're like choosing them, and like, what are some typical teen scenarios? So we were like spitballing them, like they're going to do underage drinking, and they're gonna get like deal with bullies, and they're gonna play Truth or Dare. And like, once I had enough of these, I was like, okay, we ended up with like 7 of them. And it was like, okay, every hour should be around, I think, 1,000 words. It ended up being like more like 1,500 or something like that. And there were 12 hours, so that worked out to like a little over 20,000. Or yeah, somehow. I don't know what math is. So we were like, there's 12 hours, 1,500 per hour or something like that. So every time there was a choice, I would write like a 300-word introduction to that choice. So Truth or Dare has like a 300-word setup. And then there are two like choices, and each of those are 300 words. And then they come back to the common root, and like it just like repeats like that.
Sure.
Another 300-word introduction to 7 Minutes in Heaven. Then 2 different like alternate 7 Minutes in Heaven things. And this was all super rough and really shitty. And it didn't make any sense. But it was there, and then I spent another month revising it, and then we spent another month doing final edits and like getting all of our assets and everything.
Sure. I like that though, like, and again, this is me selfishly trying to kind of understand your creative process, because you have a framework, right? Like, you walked in there with tools that you were able to use to structure your work, right? Like, I feel like that's really good for just getting past the intimidating like empty word processor screen. Like right. you got your Google Doc open and
never could have done that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be really serious about how this actually happened. It was like, we had this idea, we structured it, like I spent a couple of days like structuring it out, and within that day, like I had a Scrivener file open that had like hour 1 introduction, hour 2 is like the bullies, hour 3 is like they're having to fix this thing, and they're like, and like hour 4 is Truth or Dare. Like, that's how it went. And then I knew what the word counts were, and I knew what the pairings were for all of them too. So I just like filled it out. I was like, and I had already like created these characters, remember, too. So like hour 2, it's Venus and Neptune. They're hanging out, they're drinking together. What's gonna happen? I was like, well, I know what this character is like, I know what that character is like.
Right.
So much work had already been done that even like the really bare bones first draft of it came out like I was able to do it on that table. No other possible way to do it.
Do you find yourself like working in that kind of like structure pretty frequently, or was this like the first time that something came together as relatively neatly as that?
I mean, I've got a computer full of hundreds of thousands of words that I hope to God no one else sees.
I guess what I'm thinking is like, my work in magazines specifically like gave me a whole bunch of templates and patterns to use. So I didn't have to think about the structure and could focus on filling it in,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So like top 10 lists are a great example of this, right? Or
Totally.
like slideshows, right? Like as a person on the internet who reads things, occasionally we will revile them. But it's so like when you sometimes you have an idea that is best expressed in that format, and the easiest way to do it is just to get it out there, right? But I've never been familiar like even just the concept like the kind of the timing and pacing, the organization of We Know the Devil is really interesting to me because it makes me think of something like the Breakfast Club, right, where you have like you give yourself this constraint of, hey, there's a story that's going to happen in a specific time and place, right? And based on that, you give yourself that construct, and it might feel artificial at first, but then you build something that breathes in it, right?
Definitely. And like I knew what things that I wanted to talk about. I knew what was like bugging these characters. I knew like what their baggage was. I knew the ways in which they liked each other and the ways that they disliked each other, and like that would come out. And I found it like, you know, becoming like really natural. Like there would be these moments where I'm like, oh, this has to happen. Or like sometimes like in the first draft too, though, like sometimes that didn't happen or it didn't happen very well. And I almost totally rewrote some of those sections. But the first draft laid a foundation. Even if I deleted like everything that I had written in the first draft for whatever section, it was still really important work in like outlining here's kind of generally what's happening. And then I would be like, okay, what's the conflict here? Like what's coming out? What sort of like things that I wanted to say are going to have their like manifestation here.
So now it's done. It's been out for a couple months. And how do you feel about it in retrospect? How have you seen people engage with it? Have you been surprised? Like,
it's been
that's
really...
a face.
I mean, like, I guess I'm blown away.
That's good.
Still like it's still weird that it happened. Like I just got a royalty check actually.
Sweet.
In the mail. I was like, money. That's some money. Like you don't get a check like that, you know, and it's not as like the first check that I got like just blew my mind away. And that was like not a thing that I was quite like expecting.
Sure.
I was expecting the fan art. There's so much fan art. It's so beautiful. So many people like, and I know like Mia and I like know a lot of artists and I love us, and they're like, but like it's still really wonderful, and people are always like saying really great things about it. Like it made a lot of my friends really start like thinking again about how much like what they wanted to write about. And it's still like these are things that people have said, but I guess that like I'm still like, I guess I did that. Like occasionally I'll be like, oh yeah, I guess I made a video. I did that, and I like forget. Like I forget I made We Know the Devil like every day. Like every other day I'm like, God, what have I even done this year? Oh yeah, there was that one thing. And like I don't know what else to say. I'm glad I did it. I'm really like I don't want to read it. Every time I see one of the lines I'm like, I'm not sure if that would have like some of the lines I definitely do like. But there's like a lot of lines from sometimes people will like quote a line or there'll be a screenshot and I'll be like, woof. That was the 3-month deadline, wasn't it? And and I know like it's funny because Mia will say the same thing too. Like, and I think all of her art is like absolutely gorgeous. I think like it just is like there's nothing that looks like We Know the Devil. It's incredible. It's beautiful, and she has like so many issues with what she did, and So so I guess it's like a similar feeling, but I part of me um trusts that from my like love of what Mia did,
Hmm.
there's like surely must be value in things that I wrote, even
Right.
if like I see the warts like really, really clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I feel like that's something that I'm beginning to discover is like having a creative partner on that kind of stuff is super important, right? Like, there's a part of me that thinks, like, Irene has just started illustrating some of the essays that I've started writing, and it's
Yeah, it's
and
such
it's
a cool thing. I love it.
and it's part of me is like I'm glad that someone this awesome is willing to devote her time on augmenting something that I made that I don't think is that awesome. But if she does, then it must not be too bad, right? Like,
Right. No, it's really important, I think, to have that sort of I don't know. After making We the Devil, suddenly I'm like collaboration. I
yep,
used to think that I wasn't like I was like I wanted to like prove myself or something, or I was like not until I have proven myself in the fields of battle or something will I be worthy of like collaborating with another artist.
hmm,
I wish I'd broken myself out of that mindset earlier. Um,
yeah,
I think, um, and felt like I don't know, like I learned a lot and certainly like improved a lot as a writer. Um, in that process, it wasn't like time wasted, but
um, so I have got to guess that one of the reasons why you're not terribly that it's easy for you to forget that you made We Know the Devil is because you've got to be thinking of other stuff, right? Like I'm guessing like within the week after release, then you're like, okay, what am I doing next, right? So what are you doing next? In as
um,
concrete or as vague terms as you want to talk, right? Like I mean,
uh,
I realize that even though I follow you on Twitter and like read a whole bunch of those tweets and see a whole bunch of the selfies, like I have a pretty poor idea of like what your everyday life looks like what kind of things you're tackling, right?
well, let's see. Well, I have a full-time job, like I'm a
Yes,
teacher.
yeah,
Or like I advise students, but I teach as part of that as well.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, it keeps me really busy. It's a great job. I love it. I feel like I would have something missing in my life if I didn't wasn't doing that.
Yeah,
Mentoring and teaching and advising is something that I like do maybe like a lot on the internet. It's hard because there's a lot of like free emotional
sure,
labor on
yeah,
the internet
yeah,
is a lot
yeah,
out of you, as I've discovered in the past couple of years. So I'm like focusing more like I'm doing that at work, where it's like what I'm paid to do.
mm-hmm.
Um, because it is work and it's labor and it's got some value to it.
Oh, absolutely,
Um, and doing more creative stuff in my spare time, like Zeal.
mm-hmm.
Um, there's a Slack channel called VN 2016. So we'll see.
Sweet.
Um,
Well, I
not
remain
like
excited.
not making any promises or anything. Not gonna like talk about any timetables or something. But like, I want to do more things like We Know the Devil.
Good.
I would love to do another one of them. I'm thinking about that. So we'll see. There's a huge dream project that me and Mia and our friend Rory Francis have.
Mm-hmm.
We want to like make that happen in one way or another. I might talk to you not on this channel about it sometime.
Sounds good.
Because yeah, because it's like the big. It's good to have dreams, right?
Yeah.
This is the big thing. Um, but part of our thinking actually in making these visual novels like We Know the Devil is like stepping stones, because we had never done something like that. Now we've actually shipped a video game.
Hell yeah, you have.
Yeah.
I've got to say that I personally am like seeing We Know the Devil show up and then seeing kind of how people engaged with it and also seeing like you guys, like the team who made it, just everything about that, even though I haven't played the game, has been inspirational to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like because similarly, like I would also like to one day release a game that is mostly mine, right? Where like mine in small teams, and there's always been something that like it's the blank page problem, right? Like I just don't know where to start, and so like just talking to you about this has made it a lot less mysterious to me, and in that regards, like it's been super inspirational. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. No, that means a lot. I'm so happy that it's made people feel like one of the things that I liked is at least people talking to me. Who knows if people who are not talking to me feel very differently about this, but people talking to me have been like, that game made things feel more possible, which God is really the best thing to hear. I want it to like, I love when I read a thing or like I watch a thing or whatever, and then I like, ooh, I want to do something after this. I want to make something. Like that makes me feel so good. So the fact that people have felt that, after playing this, have been like, that means a lot to me. I'm so happy. Like I'm glad people are like, I want to push myself, to do something like similar, or like I think that it feels possible, because it was like, I remember like playing Christine Love's games, for example, and being like, you know what, it seems possible.
Yeah.
She's like, she's using, she's like all of these like fairly limited resources to tell these really compelling stories, and it's like really possible to like make that happen. And that was kind of like with the Devil, I was kind of like, I know how these like, and I had like, because I had like looked at structure visual novels and stuff, and I was like, oh, these have a structure to them. If you have a structure, you can do things. And that's like kind of how it happened.
Well, I'm very glad that it did. And to those of y'all on stream who haven't checked it out, it is available right now. You can just get it, right?
Yes, you can just get it. You can know the Devil right now for the low price of $6.66. We know the devil.com, or Date Nighto. That's datenighto.com. And you can also vote for us on Steam Greenlight. We know the Devil.
I will go ahead and paste the Steam Greenlight link in chat. Y'all should check it out. If it's a thing that you think you would buy and engage with, you can either buy it now or vote for it on Steam.
Watch the trailer; it's really cool.
I will. I was about to start playing. So I feel like
it does have autoplay. Careful.
I feel like 2 hours is probably enough time to steal from your life. I did include in the notes, if there's anything you would like to ask me on, feel free to. But if nothing comes to mind, I'm happy to release you into the wilds.
Release. Aevee has been like, we've nursed her back to health. We've set her broken leg, and now she's ready to go back. Fly on your leather jacket. The rare Pacific Northwest lesbian. In all of her glory. Well, no. I can't think of anything. I'm also like, that stream took me through 2 beers.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm always happy to talk about whatever. And yeah, hit me up at any point for any sorts of conversations about this on the stream, or if you just want to chat about game design in general.
I will. Thank you. And to everyone who's been watching the stream, again, whether you're an existing viewer or this is your first time, thank you so much. I would hugely appreciate a follow. I think the button is like on the lower left-hand side under the player. Tune in.
Is this right? Is it?
Yeah, there you go. I think we're both pointing at it. Wait, there. Yeah. I usually stream fighting games, but I also try and stream smart people talking about fighting games and making cool shit. I usually stream a couple days a week, and I'm testing this out this month as I'm getting in the habit of interviewing people on stream, ideally once a week. Aevee, you were an amazing first guest. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Yes.
And to the rest of the stream, good night, everybody. Thanks for watching, and peace out. I'll be back tomorrow with some fighting game stuff. Later, y'all.